I met a stranger who had a huge one and made a terrible choice that ruined everything.
My marriage with my husband just ended because I slept with another man as a result of my shameful curiosities. I might probably get tagged with so many things for saying that my marriage ended because I got too curious and unsatisfied with my husband and decided to cheat on him just so I could satisfy my curiosity. I didn't think I'd ever be the one to cheat in my marriage, but the temptation was just too irresistible, and I ended up making a stupid mistake because I wanted to see what it was like to sleep with a guy the size of my affair partner. I couldn't help it, and I ended up ruining my marriage as a result of my actions. My name is Tamika, and I'm a 29-year-old housewife. I don't really think I'm just a housewife, even though I don't have a stable job. I do everything from small businesses to side jobs, but none of them lasts for a long period of time. I'm just someone that doesn't like sticking to a particular routine. But I make my own money, even though it's not as big as my husband's. I've been married for 2 years to my husband, Rain. Rain is a radiologist, and he's a very intelligent person. He's also quite hardworking, and it all pays off for him. But Rain is literally 10 years older than me. He's 39 years old. I know you might be wondering how that has anything to do with my cheating, but it does. Rain has a muscular body, and that's one of the things that got me attracted to him. I liked the way he was built, but I soon got disappointed when we started dating. I learned that the size of a man's tool cannot be determined by his muscles. Rain isn't as big as I thought down there, and our intimate life isn't that great either. He does his best, but he's always tired as a result of work and barely has time to give me what I want. That's how I ended up falling into this predicament. I knew Rain didn't satisfy me as much as I wanted from the beginning, but I still got married to him because he checked all the other boxes. I thought he would get better, but he never did. I managed it like that and never complained or tried to look elsewhere until recently. I got very curious when I saw the huge tool Axel had, and that's when the FOMO kicked in. Guys, Axel is my affair partner. I think I should speak in past tense now since we're not really together anymore. He's the one I cheated on my husband with. I think it's safe to say that he's the one that made me so curious that I couldn't hold it. I just had to know what it was like to sleep with a man like him. Before I get into the details of everything that happened, let me tell you all how I met Axel. So, like I said earlier, I'm not really someone who is into one particular business. I do a lot of things, and 90% of the time, I hardly like to stay in one business for a long time. One of my friends, Rachel, is also like me, so she became the perfect business partner. Just recently, we started an online clothing store for males. I know how weird that sounds, but trust me, this isn't the first weird business I've ventured in. I'm always trying trendy things and things that bring more money at a particular time. We already tried selling unisex clothes online and even female clothes, but we discovered that the female clothing market was already very competitive. Almost every clothing store has 90% of female clothes. We also noticed that girls pay less for a lot of things and like to bargain unlike men. So I decided to start selling clothes for men because they just order stuff without caring about how expensive it is. Rain is like that. He just orders stuff and I only get to know that they ripped him off after it arrives. So yeah, that's how I wanted my business to be like. We started the clothing line for men even though it was just an experiment, and surprisingly, it became something very lucrative. The money I got out of it exceeded my expectations, and I actually realized it could finally be the business I stick to. I needed money to buy a space to have an official store and equipment. Rain gave me the money without any complaints because I don't usually ask for money unless I want to invest it. With his help, I started up my store with Rachel, and it got crazy, guys. Business was booming and I was having a great time, literally. The sales were up and we had an influx of customers. Most of the guys preferred coming to try on the clothes themselves so they could get their sizes right. Rain told me it was because men usually had a problem finding the right clothes that fit their arms and stuff. I had extra space for a changing room, so I set that up too. At first, Rain was super supportive of the business and he usually patronized me. But I don't know what suddenly got into him or why he just felt like a woman shouldn't sell male clothes. I refused to listen to him eventually, though it started causing problems in our marriage. But now, I wish I listened to him because it was thanks to this clothing business that I actually got to meet Axel. He was one of my customers and he regularly bought shoes and ties from our website online. We mainly conducted our transactions through Instagram and he never had to visit my store personally. But one day he told me he wanted to come personally, because he needed some clothes and wasn't ready to take the risks of buying stuff that didn't fit. It was easy for that to happen because we both stay in Canada. I was really surprised to see him when he came to the shop. It's not like he looked different from his Instagram or anything, it's just that he was more attractive. I asked him what he came to get, and he said he wanted to get some singlets, boxers, polo shirts, and tuxedos. I had expanded the shop thanks to Rachel's husband and his fashion ideas, so we had all the things he asked for. We even sold suits at the store. Long story short, he entered the dressing room to change into his boxers, and that's when my FOMO kicked in. Yes, guys, my FOMO kicked in when I saw his huge size. I'm not even exaggerating, he's actually very big. He tried on the boxer and singlet and came out to look at the mirror. That's when I spotted how huge his tool was. I was shocked to say the least because I never expected that kind of size from him. In fact, I didn't expect that kind of size from anyone. I've never seen anyone shaped like that before, and I can truly say he has good genetics. It was a big step up from what I usually saw with Rain, so I got very curious. He tried on a lot of boxers, and I just couldn't stop staring. I know I sound like the biggest loser in the world right now, but trust me, this is just me being honest. I might not be proud of how cheaply I behaved, but I had no choice realistically speaking. If I didn't give in to the temptation, then I'm sure I would have eventually given in. Even my friend Rachel kept on pulling me to the side to tell me just how big he was. We tried to behave ourselves until he bought what he needed and left. Rachel tried to bring up the topic after he left and tell me just how big he was, but I had to stop her because I didn't trust myself and what I would have ended up saying. I wanted to pretend like I wasn't interested even though I couldn't get my mind off him all day. I knew I was really in trouble when I got home and refused to sleep with my husband that night. It just felt like I was missing out on something when I kept comparing Axel's size with that of my husband. I'd never been with anyone his size, and I'd been having a lot of unsatisfied moments with Rain, so I just kept thinking about Axel. The FOMO really kicked in because it was the most annoying moment of my life. Many people in the comment section are surely going to come for me and try to make me look immoral, but I know I deserve it. I'm a married woman, or rather, I was a married woman, and I shouldn't have had those feelings about someone that was not my husband, but I honestly got too curious. I felt like I just had to try it because I'd been missing out on something important all my life. One day, I just couldn't take it, and I decided to message Axel. He replied to my message some hours later, and that's how we started chatting casually. I brought up random things like how there were new stocks of clothes and how we were having promo sales. I just did anything to initiate a conversation, and it worked. We started flirting, and soon enough, he was already asking for my address. I didn't give him my address and asked him for his instead. He told me his address, and I went there the very next day. I just couldn't wait, even though I tried to hold it. I wanted to know how it felt, so I had to go. When I got there, I discovered that Axel is actually really a flirt. I told him I was married just so he would know ahead of time so there wouldn't be any regrets later. But he told me he didn't care. Now that I think about it, I regret just giving in like that. But I feel like a hypocrite because that's not the same energy I had at that moment. At that moment, I thought everything he said was just too good, and I felt like he was the perfect man. I ended up sleeping with him not once, but 3 times that day. I actually slept at his house before going home the next day. I'm stupid. Trust me, I know that already. When I got home that day, Rain and I had a very long argument. It was almost like he knew that I might have cheated on him and wanted to confront me. But it was mainly because I'd never slept outside of the house since we got married, and it was very unusual. He said a lot of things and even implied that I had to close down the store because it was making me do things I'd never done before. When I spent the night at Axel's place, I knew Rain was eventually going to get angry, but I never expected him to be as angry as he was that day. He told me he'd been getting suspicious of my movements and wanted to know why I was being so secretive. Of course, I had to lie my way out of it because I was just too afraid of letting the truth out. I mean, how was I supposed to tell my husband I cheated on him? I knew Rain would never just let it go, and I knew that we would end up losing our marriage as a result of my desires. I also felt like losing him would be a big loss for me, because he was basically the only stable thing I had in my life. I didn't want to lose him. That's why I carried on with the poor, intimate life for the 2 years our marriage lasted. I was just too scared to say otherwise or try to be with someone else. A part of me kept feeling like I had no choice than to stick to the man I married, even though things didn't end up going on as planned. That's why I decided to hide the fact that I cheated on him. Call me a coward for hiding it, but I just felt like it was the best thing I could do. The reason it was so easy for me to hide it is because I thought I'd never end up seeing Axel again. I thought our relationship was over and there'll be no reason for us to meet up. I went about my daily life like nothing happened and just carried on. I didn't even tell Rachel about it because I didn't trust her that much. Even though we were business partners, I couldn't imagine telling her I cheated on my husband. I couldn't even imagine telling anyone what I did because I was just too scared of the outcome. But hiding the truth was not the best decision because things came back to stab me in the back. I've learned that deceit is never the solution and there's nothing one can do to stop the truth from coming out. Lol, you might try to hide it and succeed, but it's only going to take time before it gets out. The truth started finding its way out from my intimate life with my husband. I mean, of course, things are not expected to go back to normal after I cheated on him. There are going to be signs, and he's going to know that I cheated. It started from my nonchalant attitude towards our nights together. I just didn't feel like sleeping with him anymore. Before I met Rain, I only dated 2 men all my life. The first one was in high school and we never got intimate. The second one was a 4-year relationship in college. That's just to say that I never experienced my B before getting married to Rain. So, after being with Axel and just experiencing what it was like to be with a man like him, I hated my relationship with Rain more. I just hated getting intimate with him because I felt like it was trash and it wasn't as good as I wanted. Rain tried to be patient with me at first, but he later got very angry and impatient. He kept asking me why I was being reluctant to get intimate with him, and I just kept coming up with excuses like being sick if getting tired. In the nights when I eventually decided to get intimate with him, he could tell that I was holding something back. My reluctant attitude went on for months before the truth finally came out. It was actually long overdue if you ask me. Rain is very attentive and he started keeping an eye on me from that moment on. I knew he was trying to follow me around, but I played along and acted like I was oblivious to the things he was doing. The main reason why I acted that way is because I just didn't want him to get more suspicious. One day, something crazy happened and I got a call from Axel. I was really shocked to get a call from him considering the fact that we agreed that it would just be a one-time thing. Guys, please don't come at me. I already know how foolish and stupid I am. You really don't need to rub it into my face. I made mistakes I'm not proud of and I shouldn't have done what I did. But at that moment, all sense of reasoning was gone and I thought I was doing nothing wrong. I thought satisfying myself was natural and there was no need to feel bad about it. I should have thought about Rain and how unfair I was to him. He had been the one to cheat. I know it would have hurt me a lot. So after Axel called me, he asked us to meet up on a date. It was a weird message because I knew he was never one to take things slow for any reason. But I decided to just listen to him and go on a date with him. He told me he liked me while we were on the date. Yes, he told me he liked me. I was shocked and I found his sudden confession very weird because, like I said, he already knew I was married. I couldn't understand why he would tell a married woman he liked her. What did he expect at the end of the day? That I would get into a full-time relationship with him? I was already having serious problems in my marriage with my husband, so I didn't want a situation where things got complicated. That's why I told him to hold on for a bit so I could think about what he said. He kept calling me after that day and trying to check up on me. For me, I knew there was no possibility of me actually liking him or falling in love with him. I just like what he offered and the fact that he was quite good in bed. That's why I decided to give in at the end of the day. I tried to resist, but the FOMO kicked in again, and I just wanted to see what it was like one more time. It's messed up, I know, but my common sense is only coming back now. Back then, I actually thought I was doing the best thing I could do for myself. I ended up meeting up with Axel one last time, and I spent the night with him again. After that day, I made it clear to him that I could not meet him again, because my husband was getting suspicious, and I couldn't afford to keep making him find red flags. Axel agreed and said he understood where I was coming from, and that it was for the best. He promised never to contact me again, and also told me he was even planning to leave Canada because he got transferred at work. I deleted his number, then left his house that day. I went home straight because I thought Rain would be at work and would not be at home. But that was just me deceiving myself and being in the dark, because when I got home, Rain was already there waiting for me. Since I got married to him, he's never missed work without a valuable reason, and he always tries his best to keep a steady workflow. so I was really surprised to see him at home that day. I know you guys are wondering why it bothered me that he was at home. Well, the fact that I spent the night outside and didn't come home scared me. We already had issues because of that before, so I just knew that there was going to be drama. I was also 100% sure that the only reason Rain didn't go to work was because he wanted to wait for me and confront me about staying late again. My assumptions were not wrong because that is exactly what happened. He didn't even let me settle down when I came back. He started saying all sorts of hurtful words, and he went as far as telling me that he knew I was cheating on him. I was very surprised that he said that to me because I didn't expect that he would even suspect I was cheating on him. I knew that he was having suspicions about the way I was acting at night, but I didn't think he would connect it to my infidelity. It was a very heated argument, and even though I tried my best not to say anything that would implicate that I cheated, all my efforts were in vain. It was initially all about the fact that he kept poking me to say something. He asked me why I stayed up late again and why I did not come home. He also asked me where I slept when I didn't come home for the second time. All those questions really caught me off guard because they were not questions that I was expecting. I didn't think that he would be at home, so I did not prepare ahead of time to tell him the things I needed to tell him. While we were arguing, he told me I needed to stop acting like I was the hottest woman on earth by denying him intimacy at night. He tried to diminish my confidence, so I got angry and told him I was cheating on him with someone that was far better than him. I told him he was the one who wasn't the hottest person. He never satisfied me, so I had to look for someone who did. It was after I said those words that I realized that he had just been trying to get the truth out of me and was not sure that I cheated on me. He just wanted me to say the words myself so that he would know the truth, and I fell for it. That's how my marriage ended, guys. Rain was so angry that he almost laid his hands on me. I really respect the level of self-control he had and how he held back himself. I shouldn't have robbed it in his face, but my anger made me do it. He sent me out of the house that very day, and 2 weeks later I was served with divorce papers. He didn't try to consult me personally, and I haven't heard from him since then. I signed the divorce papers, and now I am waiting for our court hearing so our divorce can be finalized. My stupidity and unnecessary curiosity has now ended my 2 years of marriage. Update. Hi guys, I'm here to update you all on everything that happened since the last update. So the divorce eventually got finalized about 2 months later. Before we finally got divorced, Rain made sure he collected the money he gave me to invest in the store. Thankfully, I was able to give him the money as a result of the profits I made from the store. He only contacted me through his lawyer and never had any physical conversation with me. The last time I spoke to Rain was when I told him I cheated on him. The guilt has been eating me up and I regret everything. But I guess there's nothing I can do at the end of the day. I let my needs and desires lead me to do something I eventually regretted with passion. One thing about life is that you only truly appreciate what you have after it's gone. Few months ago, I didn't think that I would really miss my ex-husband like I do now. Back then, I just felt like I needed to cheat on him, and that would be the best thing to do. I didn't realize that I would end up regretting it with so much passion at the end of the day. But now I actually do realize that I should have never married Rain if I felt like he didn't satisfy me like I wanted. It was unfair to him, and it was also unfair to me. My husband was the most insufferable man ever. You couldn't begin to comprehend the ego of the man. He had the audacity to kick me out of his house over a stupid game. He was also playing the game, so I thought he was okay with it. I didn't know my husband was conceited and petty, but do you guys want to know one thing about me? I was more petty. He tried to make me feel stupid and wanted to make sure I regretted it, but I decided to play at his own game. Yes, I played my husband at his own game of making sure I regretted my actions. I had to make sure he felt the regret himself, and it was a drastic war between us. Before this event, we had been cool. I had loved being married to my husband. He had been one of the most charming and nice people I had ever met. This was part of the reason that had attracted me to him. My name is Paige, and I'm 26 years old. My husband's name is Robert, and he's 29 years old. I had met Robert at my friend Lillian's birthday party. He had looked out of place. I had walked up to him, and we got talking. From there, I learned that he was studying to get his master's degree in investment and assets management at the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. He had come all the way from Tulsa to Norman in OK for Lillian's birthday party because Lillian had told him she wanted him to meet someone. That someone had been me. After Lillian formally introduced us, we hit it off. From there, we quickly became friends and hung out on the weekends when he would drive down from Tulsa to see me, or I would go visit him. I wasn't in college because I didn't attend and was always working to make ends meet back then. Anyway, the dynamic worked between us, and I got to know his friends, and he got to know mine with us, and I got to know his friends and hang out with them, and he got to know mine. We started dating 2 years later when he was done with his master's program and began working as a stockbroker for a financial company in Tulsa. And then he told me to move to Tulsa and start living with him. I had been in between jobs at that moment, so I had agreed. Once I moved to Tulsa, I got a job as a customer rep at a 5-star hotel and got to know my husband even more as I was living with him. Again, our dynamic worked even living together. I became closer with his friends, and I would have said family, but my husband didn't have any family. He had been orphaned at the age of 6 and had grown up in the system. All the houses he had been put in didn't turn out well for him because of the parents of the families, but he had still remained friends with the people he had met in the system. This is why he had friends and not family. Anyway, after a year of dating, my husband proposed to me. It hadn't been an outstanding ceremony, but we had his friends, and the few friends I had from Norman and the one I had made in Tulsa had cheered for us as my husband bent down on one knee to ask me to be by his side forever. I've been married to my husband for 3 years now, and during that time, I've become a hotel concierge, and he's gone on to open his own firm. We decided on not having kids till at least 5 years into our marriage. It was a joint decision as we wanted to enjoy our time as a married couple before children would come into the mix. We decided we would do all the fun things as couples, go on adventures, attend parties, just basically be childish together until our set mark to have children. I had loved the idea of getting to experience fun things as a married couple. I just hadn't expected my husband to be someone who couldn't take a joke or someone who was overly insecure. This was the beginning of our problems. My husband had been invited to a house party by one of his foster friends. It was meant to be just an indoorsy kind of thing. I'm sure you guys get the vibe. We got there and then discovered it wasn't a small gathering of 5 we had expected. There were over 15 people present, people my husband and I didn't know except the host. The party was quiet for the first 2 hours. You know, people just trying to get to know each other and all. Do you want to know what I was doing during that time? I stuck to my husband like the loving and devoted wife I was. I was literally glued to his side. And my husband was mid-social. He only talked to you if you talked to him. He wasn't the kind to walk up to strike up a conversation, so the people getting to know us were the ones coming around to talk to my husband, despite his broody face. Then, after 2 hours of basic socializing with music in the background, the host, who was my husband's friend, claimed the party was too dull and something needed to be done to liven it up. Boom. Someone suggested a game of spin the bottle, and over half of the guests present agreed. In a room full of adults past the age of 25, over half wanted to play a childish game, and I was one of them. I was excited because it had been a long time since I partook in something like that. Call me childish if you may. But I had raised up my hand along with 8 other people when the host called for volunteers. As you would have guessed, my husband was already boiling with anger, and he told me in hushed words that I shouldn't join in on the game. He had been quite stern when he had said I shouldn't join, but I saw it as him trying to spoil my fun for the evening. After all, he had been the one that had brought me to the party in the first place, and when it began to liven up, he wanted to stop my fun? Ain't no way that was going to happen. I joined in without his consent, and only when the bottle had already landed on one of the ladies in the circle did I realize that it was only singles that had joined in to play the game. Did I regret my actions at that point in time? Yes, I did, but I couldn't back out then because the point of our whole pact, my husband and I, was to be adventurous and so fun in our marriage before we had to start carrying on the responsibility of children that other people would be envious of what we have. And if I had backed put, then they would see my husband as overbearing, which he was, and they would see me as no fun, which I wasn't. So I stuck to the game. What was the worst thing that could have happened? I realized the worst thing that could happen a few minutes later when the bottle mouth pointed to me and the bottle end pointed to a guy that wasn't part of my husband's friend group. Then the guy dared me to take off a piece of my clothing. The murmurs had started up immediately because other people apart from the stupid dimwit had realized I was a married woman, and they were all looking back and forth between my husband and I to see if an alpha fight would break out. Well, my husband didn't do anything, and the stupid dimwit finally realized there was a ring on my finger and then settled for a peck on the cheek. I could do that with ease and all the tension would calm. That was what I had thought to myself. I was wrong as always. The tension didn't calm. In fact, it grew worse because as I turned to give the stranger a peck, and he shifted his face, which made me give him a kiss on his mouth. I gave a stranger a kiss by mistake, and my husband had seen it. Everyone that had been around the circle had pretended not to see that the guy had turned on purpose. They all just kept silent and avoided my eyes. But my husband had seen it. I was ashamed at first, of course. I had been ashamed because one random stranger had gotten the best of me. He had turned his head deliberately. Apparently, my husband hadn't seen it as the mistake it was. He saw it as defiance, and he didn't spare any words in telling me how I had disrespected him and blah, blah, blah. He was mad, but I was mad too because I had also tried explaining that the kiss had been a mistake. It had never been my intention to kiss a guy I had no idea who he was. However, what my husband was mad about was the fact that I had gone to play the game in the first place. According to him, if I hadn't gone to play the game, the kiss would have never happened. Can you guys imagine that? Wasn't he supposed to take my side first? Why was I the first on his list for appropriation of blame instead of the guy who had asked for a peck and turned a harmless peck into a mouth-to-mouth kiss? Well, I didn't argue further that night, and I remembered clearly that I had apologized. I had gone to sleep with the thought that all was finally well. You guys wouldn't believe the tantrum my husband threw the next day and the following days after it. He never let me forget it. And do you guys want to know the cherry on top of the cake? He kicked me out. After a full week of enduring his tantrums over a stupid spin-the-bottle game, my husband came back one evening from work and said he couldn't bear to see my face knowing that I had disrespected him in front of people he knew and didn't know. Can you guys begin to comprehend that lame reason? I had wounded his ego, and instead of maybe talking about it or maybe listening to me, because I wasn't the one wrong in any way, he decided to throw me out. I just knew it had been his friends. There had been no other logical reason why my husband would make that kind of rash decision. Well, by the next morning, my husband had brought out my luggage from my room and said we needed to take a break. Who in the world takes a break from marriage over one stupid kiss that had been a mistake? I was disappointed because I had thought he would sleep it off because it was mostly frustrations from work, and it wouldn't be a big deal, but I was proved wrong by the time morning came around. You guys can't begin to imagine my shock at waking up to get dressed for work and seeing my husband with my suitcase in his hand telling me he needed a break from our marriage. And do you know what he did when I told him I wasn't leaving? He became more justified in his action. He told me that this was my problem. According to him, I didn't respect his opinions. How was I supposed to respect him kicking me out of his house in a city where I didn't know anyone closely to ask them for a place to stay? But my husband hadn't put that fact into consideration. He just swung his ego around and didn't like that I hadn't sucked up to his stupid alpha tendencies. I left my husband's house to go and stay in one of the staff's rooms in the hotel where I worked. I had to stoop low to ask my coworkers if they had an extra place for me to sleep at their houses. To say I had been beyond livid wasn't even going to cut it, all because of a stupid kiss. If I had actually kissed the dimwit, then okay, I wouldn't have been so angry, but I hadn't deliberately kissed the man and see what I was suffering. So I decided to actually justify the reason why I was suffering so I wouldn't be suffering for nothing. After all, my husband had said he wanted us to take a break from our marriage, and I was going to do just that. And I did just that, you guys. I sought out the reason for the break in my marriage and decided to fully go for the kiss. Luckily, if you wanted to find anybody in Tulsa, just go by the major convenience store. They were bound to come by sooner or later, and the dimwit happened by. I had bumped into him on purpose, and he remembered me. Of course he would. I wasn't at all forgettable, except to my husband. Anyway, we hit it off and began going out. On one of those outings, when he had escorted me back to the staff room of the hotel I was staying in, I had sneakily grabbed him in and took the kiss that had caused a whole lot of trouble, and believe me, it had been worth it. From then on, we began sleeping together. This lasted for 2 whole months, and in that period of time, my husband never made to contact me, not even once. He never showed up at my workplace to ask of me or call my family to know if I had been doing well. Nothing. Nada. Meanwhile, the dimwit that had accidentally kissed me was treating me like I was his lady. I know you all must be wondering if he didn't know that I was married. He knew, but he also thought I had gone through a divorce. I lied that my husband and I being at the party was our last leap at trying to save our marriage. But after the party, it didn't work out, and we officially divorced. My affair hadn't even seemed to mind. He treated me like an egg, thinking I had just gone through a rough divorce. It had been as easy as that, and I was having the time of my life. My affair took me on dates, was fun, didn't get worked up over something like my husband did, and wasn't one to throw tantrums. He listened, and I had thought I had hit the jackpot, you guys, with no husband attached to my status. I was happy. I was happy because even if my husband caught me cheating, there was no way he was going to blame it on me. He had been the one to insist on taking a break in our marriage after all. He hadn't specified what taking a break meant. I was so certain he was having the time of his life and expecting me to be somewhere in the corner sulking over the fact that he hadn't called me for 2 whole months. I mean, I might as well live my life like I wasn't married, right? The next week, my husband decided that he should call me. Like, could you imagine? He thought maybe I finally learned my lesson and we could start to live together again. My husband actually said that. As if our marriage was like a movie you could press pause and then play for. Lol, I had never lived a more hilarious moment in my life. You wanted me to learn to respect you, and what you do is kick me out of the house in the hopes that I would come crawling at your feet and begging you for forgiveness. My husband had another thing coming. I wasn't going to go back to him until he was the one who begged me to return. I wasn't a plaything. I was his wife, and he had treated me like garbage, all because his friends had told him I didn't respect him from my actions at that stupid spin the bottle game. To be frank, I had never even wanted to go to that party, but my husband had coaxed me to go. I went to the party because of him. I stuck to his side the entire boring night, and when I got the opportunity to do something fun, he tried to coddle me. Did that seem fair? Then after he threw his tantrums for a full week, he went drinking with his friends and had listened to their drunk rantings about respect and their stupid ego, and had got back and told me he wanted a break from marriage because I didn't respect him. And even if I didn't, it had just been a one-time thing. He decided that would be punishment for a one-time incident where I had disrespected him. Well, on the day he called me to tell me I could come back to his house, that our break was over, that day I decided my husband was going to grovel. And I succeeded. Yes, I did. My husband began calling me every day the following week after his first call, when I had told him in plain terms that my break wasn't over yet. He started showing up to my workplace, disturbing my phone and my coworkers. All the things I had wanted him to do, but it was too late at that moment. He got me flowers and all the stuff that would make a woman weak in the knees, but I wasn't budging. I didn't plan on budging, but something else happened. I found out that I was pregnant. And before you all come for me that I had gotten pregnant for my affair and wanted to plant it on my husband, that wasn't true. Here was what happened. I had fainted one day at work and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor told me I had put my baby under great risk, and when I told him there was no way I was pregnant, he confirmed that I was already 6 months along. I had asked how it was possible I wasn't showing yet, and why I had felt no symptoms of the pregnancy, and the doctor told me my pregnancy was probably a cryptic one, and that wasn't a bad thing, as long as I didn't stress myself too hard. I only began seeing my affair 2 months from that time, so there was no way it was from him. So I had to go back to my husband. But I didn't tell him I was pregnant just yet. I wanted to see how he would treat me because in my mind I didn't think our marriage would work again. Believe me, I wanted it too, but I didn't think it would because I knew my husband was going to find out about my affair. When I got back to his house, I knew our marriage was a ticking time bomb, but I decided to enjoy it because my husband decided he was going to keep groveling. He took me out on dates, shopping, sent me money unexpectedly, basically did things that had shown he was sorry, and I was on the lookout to see when the thread of good things would snap. My affair had started his own madness movement. He would disappear for days on end, and I just cut him off from there. My husband was back to his senses, so I had no need for him. Remember when I said it was only a matter of time before my husband reverted back to his tantrums? It wasn't even up to 2 weeks before he brought up the topic of me disrespecting him, and he told me I shouldn't do it again, or he was going to leave me. There was another party that night that another one of his friends was hosting, and it was mandatory I attended with him, for a reason I hadn't known. But everything happened for a reason. The party was the snapping factor of my marriage. Before the party, I had planned to tell my husband, but he had gotten me so outraged with the "don't disrespect me" talk, so I didn't tell him then and planned to do so after the party. Another mistake I made. My sleeping with another man was exposed at the party. I mean, you couldn't have written a better controversial script than the one that had happened at that party. It was so unbelievable. The man I'd had an affair with decided to show up at the party and saw me at the party with my husband and decided his ego couldn't take a little trip. He walked up to me and started yapping so loud that he got the attention of the party. When the murmurings increased, I knew they had caught wind of our conversation, and it wasn't long until my husband came into the conversation and understood what was going on. The look on his face was comical, because I had done the very thing he told me not to do when we had left for the party. My husband left the party without me, and when I got back home, he had locked me out and thrown my things out. Thank God I hadn't fully moved out of the staff room when that had happened. The next week, a lawyer called me and told me my husband wanted me to sign divorce papers, and I was to meet him at the office. I got there and my husband was already waiting for me. He was livid and flung the divorce papers in my face. Then that's when I dropped the bomb. I told him I was carrying his baby. Of course he didn't believe it, and at that point in time I couldn't be bothered if he believed it or not. I signed the divorce papers willingly because I didn't want to be married to him. I already knew our marriage was over, just like I had said before. If you're wondering if he asked for a paternity test, he did. My baby was born 2 months later and my ex-husband got the paternity test and found out it was his daughter. Do you know this man had the effrontery to take me to court to derive me of my right to take care of my child? He wanted to take my child from me. Luckily, the court didn't find any tangible evidence that I was a bad citizen and granted us both joint custody of our child, and he was fined for wasting their time. Served him right. Next time, he wouldn't be so stupid. I went back to Norman after the court settlement, and we agreed to him coming to see our child once in a month till my daughter grew older for him to be taking her on weekend visit to Tulsa. That's how my marriage ended, and in my heart, I have no grudges against my husband, but I hope he fixes his ego trip before he gets married again. And if you don't support my side of the story, I honestly don't care.